Well, g'day everyone. It's Wednesday, the 16th of April, Johnny. It seems like forever, but we're back on the air.
Well, it does seem like forever, Woody. It's been a bit of a difficult time, I suppose, for everyone. We've had the election, we've had a number of things happening. You've been over in America, and everyone's been busy. So we're back at it, though.
Absolutely. And talking to Gerard Rennick like we have done before we came to air was I'm exhausted just listening to what he's doing. Gerard, welcome to the program. It's great to have you back on, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. It's good to be back on. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Now, I've got to tell you that I've just been talking to a fishing mate of mine up in Proserpine, Rob Southall. And Rob and his wife Shane have been driving between Mackay and Proserpine, putting people first posters up all over the place. So, mate, they're exhausted, and I wanted to have a chat to him about the Barramundi situation up there, and he said I'm too tired to even go fishing, and that's all thanks to you.
Well,
So
look, thanks very much for that, Rob. I really appreciate it. And can I acknowledge all the volunteers out there that are helping with this election, and all those volunteers that even aren't part of People First, because democracy is not a spectator sport. It's only as good as what you make of it. And congratulations to everyone who's put their hand up and run, because it means you've got the guts and the courage of your convictions to run. And we really need more of that in this country, because the thing that I fear the most is that apathy will destroy us because we don't stand up for what we believe in. And we saw a lot of that in COVID, where people just didn't fight the fight, or, probably didn't have the, I mean, I can kind of understand why, because of the media pylon, but, we can't just relax on our laurels, or we will lose everything great that we have in this country.
absolutely, and coming back from the States, I can tell you that there's a lot more freedom over there than we enjoy here. It's palpable. And when I shared stories with prominent Americans that I got to speak to, they were flabbergasted by just how badly this country is being run. But all that aside, we know where you stand on you've been a courageous fighter against mandates, and you've been, your attacks on the TGA, they're not attacks, but you're just asking honest questions. We don't even need to talk about that tonight because you've established yourself in that area. There's so much more to running the country than dealing with those issues. So if you want, I can bring up your website if you want to go through that and how to vote and all that sort of stuff. We can talk about that. But Johnny, there's been a lot of talk today about preferences, especially from the Libertarians and One Nation. Where do we stand with that? What's going on there? Because I'm a bit miffed by it all.
Well, I think what's happened is it's virtually a first in politics. I think that Gerard's party, the family People's First, and the Libertarian Party and the Heart Party have got together essentially on the one ticket above the line, and this is a real demonstration of how political parties that aren't as big as the three major ones can work together to appeal to a wider audience, and I think it's an indication of what we can expect going forward, because it demonstrates that there's real leadership in those organisations to actually bring this together. Because it wouldn't have been an easy task, Gerard, would it? Getting agreement on all that. Um,
No, it hasn't, John, but it's also, it shows what you can do if we act professionally and treat each other with respect. And, as we were talking before the start of the show, I do want to work with all these other parties to make sure that we optimise our vote every election. Because I know once you're in Canberra, in the Senate, like, we will work together as a team, right? Like, I mean, we might be sort of, it's a bit like you'll often see league players after a game, they're good mates with guys from the other clubs because in a prior life they grew up together, or they knew something. So it's we do share in the main values, and we really need to foster that relationship and keep it going. And I'd want to thank all the other minor parties that have preferenced me very high on the ticket. So that's the Libertarians, Family First, Trumpet of Patriots. Well, actually, I haven't seen theirs yet. The Gap. And I really want to thank the Katter Party. I have to acknowledge the Katter Party because they've jumped on the ticket with me. So, I'm not sure what that'll end up being worth from North Queensland, but that's beside the point. The point is that they have backed me and said they need to get, they want Senator Rennick back in Queensland, in Canberra. And to have that from Bob Katter, who, was really stood on his own back in the 90s against the ravages. He called out, the bad neoliberal policy of the time that saw our infrastructure privatised, our farmland purchased, the destruction of dairies and things like that. It's a real honour to have Bob back me in, because he's been in politics for 50 years. He's seen a lot of things happen. And, it's a real compliment. And to Robbie Katter as well, who I still think, is the best politician, state politician in Queensland. The Katters, there's only 3 of them in the state parliament, but they stand up for conservative values, which is more than I can say what the LNP have been doing at the state level. So thanks very much to the Katters as well. And I should also mention Michael O'Neill from the Heart Party, a real legend, very, very nice man. You couldn't meet a nice man on the street. He's been cooperating with everyone. Heart Party's running with us on the ticket in Victoria. So People First, we're doing joint tickets in 3 states. We're running with the Katters in Queensland, the Libertarians and Hard in New South Wales, and Hard in Victoria as well. And we are preferencing each other, Family First and ourselves in South Australia. And I'm working with Rod Carleton in WA as well. So, thanks to all those minor parties for trying to cooperate as much as we can. And hopefully we can continue to work on that and build on that into the future.
I couldn't speak more highly of the Katters. When I was a young pilot in Queensland, I flew Bob Katter Senior around his electorate, and a finer man you'd never wish to meet. He was a beautiful bloke, and I learned a lot from just listening to him while we droned along for hour after hour over Western Queensland. And Bob the same, going out to Mount Isa a lot, as I used to do in the 737. He was always there, always friendly. And Robbie as well. The whole family just seems to be attuned to the values of Queenslanders. So well done to them for that. As we're going to air, or as we're recording this, Gerard, down in Victoria in Wonthaggi, your candidate, Dr. Chris Neal, is sharing stage with Russell Broadbent at the Wonthaggi Workers Club. There's a real camaraderie between them two, from what I'm hearing. So you've got a great candidate down there as well.
Oh yeah, Chris Neal's a legend. We've got some great Senate candidates. Chris Neal, Madison King in WA, Robert Loney in South Australia. They're really, really good candidates. And of course, Tracy Sedman, who's happily, very kindly jumped on number 3. She didn't, have an issue at all. It just, if it was going to help the Libertarians get up and Craig Kelly get up. So thanks to all my Senate candidates as well, who are doing a great job. And I should note their lower house candidates who are really working hard up here in Queensland. And the other states as well. Chris is a great guy, highly competent. He's exactly what the Senate needs. Expertise, very measured. He presented to the excess death inquiry probably about a year ago now. That was the inquiry organised by Ralph Babbitt, but he presented and just completely, destroyed the evidence of the TGA. And I would love to see him in estimates just slowly eviscerate the TGA and the health department, because we really need to, fix up our health system on so many levels. It's not just vaccines. It's the PBS scheme, how that gets rorted. Pharmaceutical drugs will often, they'll slightly modify a drug, get a new patent on it, and then somehow get that back on the PBS scheme. And there's plenty of generic drugs that can be used, where you don't have to pay a fortune. So that's being ripped off. We've got, the front line, my hometown of Chinchilla, this is my, one of my big bugbears. Today is 8,000 people, has no maternity ward. When I grew up there, it was 3,000 people, had 3 midwives, one of which was my mum, and a maternity ward. And, we've seen a decline in front end services such as nursing and healthcare. And it's disgraceful. I mean, we've got a wealthy country. We've ridden an iron ore boom, a mineral commodities boom in the last 20 years. And not only have we got nothing to show for it, we've actually gone backwards in the level of foreign debt and foreign ownership in this country. And that's why I've sort of tried to make this campaign all about, economic reform, because ultimately our freedoms are the child of affluence. And if we don't get ourselves, in a position where we are prosperous, then we become more and more beholden to government handouts, and to the government looking after us. And of course, if the government controls, our level of standard of living, they have greater control of us overall. As I've said, you go back to those COVID mandates. If everyone was a millionaire and owned a house, they could have all told the bosses to get stuffed. And they could have won by people power, but they slowly picked them off one by one. It was I don't know if this was by design, but they did it so gradually. If they'd come out straight away at the start of that year and said everyone's got to get mandated, they probably wouldn't have got it over the line. But, it was first the health workers and then another organisation and another organisation. And they slowly sort of pick people off one by one. But that's why, affluence is really important, and owning, controlling your own wealth is just so incredibly important. Yeah.
Yeah, we see consistently the hedge funds getting involved in, with people like BlackRock and Vanguard and all of those. The superannuation is being used as a weapon against the people it's meant to support, from the way I see it.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, and we saw that we got $3 trillion here in Australia under it's controlled by non-elected super fund boards. So that's one of our policies at People First, is these super funds have to actually hold elections to select their board, because there's no accountability on that. And we saw that in The Voice, where they backed the yes vote. They're driven by ideology and not productivity, and that's a real issue. And then just last month we saw Kevin Rudd, Wayne Swan flip over to Washington with Kevin Rudd, and they were trying to sell, Australian super funds, get Australian super funds to invest in American US, assets in the United States. Nothing against the USA, but they should be investing in assets here and building new infrastructure here. That's what Bob Hawke said superannuation would be used for. And I will take a shot across the bow here. Sorry, guys, but it's got to be said. One Nation support compulsory superannuation. Joe Jamal, Turning Point Australia, put out a questionnaire, and it was those results were released last week. And One Nation does support compulsory superannuation. And I've heard Malcolm Roberts slag off BlackRock on numerous occasions, quite rightly, but you can't support compulsory superannuation and then criticise BlackRock, because BlackRock make their living out of people forced savings, especially here in Australia. And if we want to see, as I said, what we want to do is give people a hand up, not a hand out. And if we have to do people, and we want to empower people, and to do that, people have to take responsibility for their own personal decisions, and that includes raising their children and saving for their own retirement. Now, not everyone's going to be able to save for their own retirement, especially if you're on a below median income, and that's why we want a strong pension that covers, that's high enough to meet the cost of living needs. But superannuation, it's not working. Basically, you've got 40% of people retiring today with a mortgage. 1992, that was only 10%. We still have over 50% of retirees on the full pension. That hasn't shifted in the 33 years since superannuation started. And it's a false economy. It's good that you get a 7% return on your superannuation, but guess what? House prices are going up by 7% as well. So if you're on, say, $80,000 a year, you pay $50,000 in cost of living, $20,000 in tax. If there was no super, you might be able to save $10,000 a year. But 12% of 80,000 is $9,600. So the way it works at the moment is that most of your what you could save for a house is going into superannuation. So that if let's just say you're on $80,000 for 5 years and you didn't have super, you could save $50,000 and get deposit for a house. Because of superannuation, it's very difficult to save for a deposit on a house. And even if you'd say we're on 100 and you could save 10,000 a year, well then that's all very well, but because superannuation delays the time you can save for a house deposit. So if they're both growing by 7%, your deposit's only, say, 50,000, so you're only $3,500, but the median value of a house is $1 million, so it's going up by 7% at 70,000. So your saving can't keep up with the rise in house prices. And this is where superannuation is a real false economy, and it's not the only reason, but it is a significant reason for why so many people struggle to get into housing today. And and I'm telling you, it's a significant reason why the Greens do well as well, because our young children today, they're living in the inner city areas because they can't afford to go out to the burbs and buy land. And then of course the inner city, they tend to sort of go out, they get easily swayed by Greens ideology at university and stuff like that. And we're breeding a generation of Marxists if we do not get them into houses.
Go for it, Johnny. You've been occupying too much time. Go for it, mate.
No, not at all, Hoodie. Now, Gerard, it's interesting you mentioned One Nation, because I think probably one of the things that the audience really needs to know about is just where you where you are potentially in relation to getting back into the Senate. I mean, the people that I speak to, I mean, you look at social media, you look at your Facebook page alone. I mean, every time you put something out, it goes viral. You know, everyone is following what you're doing. You've been the voice of common sense on a lot of matters, but especially COVID and the mandates and the way that you hold those bureaucrats to account in those Senate estimates is nothing short of brilliant. It is absolutely astounding. Now, we love Malcolm Roberts, but the reality is that it's really down to this election as to whether you get elected or whether One Nation goes through. I mean, that's how tight it probably is in Queensland. Um, so I think everyone wants to see you back there. People probably don't understand, Gerard, that your background, your expertise is actually in finance. And realistically, I mean, this country's a basket case in terms of the financial situation. I mean, so you are, in my opinion, one of the most suited people to lead this country out of this mess. It's a shame you can't be the Prime Minister, but what do you want to say to the people out there about voting for you over One Nation? Because I think that's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. I have to say, it's disappointing it's come down to myself and Malcolm because we're on the same side of the ticket in the same state. So, first of all, if we can get 28% of the vote between us, we can get in because we've preferenced each other, albeit I have preferenced Malcolm lower on the ticket. But ultimately, I expect Malcolm to be there, in the final count. So those preferences will go, if I'm out, they'll go straight to Malcolm because if it goes as expected, and there's always could be an upset, it's there. If Malcolm and myself left, then our preferences will go straight to each other. So it didn't really matter where we are on the sixth, provided we're all preferencing each other. We just needed to be in front of the LNP. The LNP, for what it's worth, preference Malcolm over me because they hate my guts and they know that I'm a threat to them because I can roll the LNP. And I've got to admit, I'd be lying if I said to you, driving a wedge into that party does motivate me, as well as obviously protect seeing our country do well, because I know just how evil the people that run the party are. The grassroots members, just like bank customers are good people, right? Like it's like anything. I mean, unions, most members of unions are good. It's just you get a few bad eggs at the top and it wrecks it for everyone, right? Well, it's the same for the LNP. So, but back to Malcolm. Look, it's not Malcolm. I guess I felt I've got a lot to offer. I felt I've got probably more economic solutions and a better understanding of the Tax Act and monetary policy and superannuation. I was actually surprised that One Nation supported compulsory superannuation, given the comments made by Malcolm about BlackRock. I mean, you can't support compulsory superannuation and then diss out BlackRock because the superannuation and BlackRock go hand in hand. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't really want. I guess, look, I guess I'm younger. I think I'm 16 years younger than Malcolm. It's something like that. And I've got more offer in terms of the economic stuff. And look, to be fair, Pauline's done a fantastic job. And we should acknowledge that she has tried her hardest over 30 years to deal with immigration, and everything she said back in the late 90s was correct about immigration. And it's disappointing that she has been ignored. I mean, having said that, immigration was bad. I always thought it was bad, and it sort of got out of control after foreign students were allowed to come in 2008 because they were obviously using it to prop up housing prices from that time on, as opposed to say in the 70s. Well, I think and it has to be said, we're a country built on immigration. So I'm not anti-immigration, but it has to be, it's like when you go drinking, right? You got to drink at a moderate rate. You can have a couple of stubbies and it's all good, but if you have too many too soon, it gets messy fast. But yet again, Pauline hasn't been able to persuade people and really wedge it through. Well, she has. Look, it's not fair to say that she has, but she hasn't got results. And I should say that I should be judged the same way in 15 or 20 years if I'm still around. But we need to get results. One Nation, after 30 years, have 2 senators in Parliament. The Greens have 12. Pauline got into federal Parliament at the same time Bob Brown did in 1996. The Greens today have 12 senators. One Nation has 2. And that was on the back of that double dissolution with Malcolm Turnbull, where, due to population up here, and they really hated Malcolm. We've got Ralph Babbitt in, but yet again, Ralph's sort of between now UAP and Trumpeter Patriots. And, I'm not sure if he wants to run, but he better make his mind up fast. But yet again, we're basically looking at, on our side of politics, 2 One Nation, 1 UAP and 1 LNP reject. So we need to grow that crossbench. We need to grow a Conservative Party, a respectable, polished and professional and a compassionate party that can win a senator from every state at every election to get 12 senators. And then once we get 12 senators, we can start attacking lower house seats where, like one, for example, up here would be Blair. And we've got a very good candidate up here, Catherine Chadwick, who's just a fantastic candidate. She gave a speech the other night that had that been public, televised, we had about 100 people in the room. And I just thought to myself, this is tragic, that because if the electorate of Blair had have heard her speech, she would win that today, hands down. But of course, Sky News won't touch us. They're a pack of arseholes, Sky News. I'm sorry, but the way they just focus on the 2 major parties and One Nation, and to the, they just don't give any other minor parties a crack anymore. Really, really annoys me because they do like to, consider themselves a point of difference, but they're not at the moment. So look, I guess, the other strategy. So I guess, it's the economic knowledge, the youth, and the fact that we will be setting up divisions in other states. Because I can tell you, trying to run this campaign centrally from Brisbane across the country has not been easy, and it's not the right way to do it. We want to create autonomous, independent state divisions where they get to select their own Senate candidates and members, and they run their election campaigns pretty much autonomously. Because every state needs to be focused on just getting that senator in, not trying to spread themselves too thin across the country. So and I guess and the other thing is I've been looking to One Nation because I did think about joining One Nation. I've been looking to One Nation to see what their transition plan is because Pauline and Malcolm are both going into their 70s, and I think they owed it to their members to say, well, this is where we're going into the future. And Malcolm's going to be 70 this year and he's asking for another 6 years. So is he going to do the full 6 years? I don't know if he's even been asked that question. He will probably say he will. Others disagree, and it's all speculation. But yet again, and Pauline will be up again in 3 years' time asking for another 6. So that'll take her through to when she's almost 80. And it'd be fair to Pauline, she's in, for her age, she does look in pretty good shape, notwithstanding though that, this is where I will give Malcolm 10 out of 10. He does the work, he turns up to estimates like myself. Pauline doesn't turn up to estimates. I think people should know that. But Malcolm does. So, he's always tried hard in estimates to hold them to account as well. So he will be a loss if he's not back there doing that because between him and myself, we're, like Ralph Babbitt doesn't turn up to estimates either. So, he will be a loss if he's not there doing estimates. So yeah, that would be the significant part of losing Malcolm as well. And it should be acknowledged, like he has worked hard, Malcolm. But yet again, it's not about you can work hard, but you've also got to get the results. And we also want to, promote a vision and a sense of optimism and a sense of hope and some credibility so we can influence outcomes. Because one of the things I don't want to sort of say is we want to get out of this. So TGA are going to, so One Nation's policy is to abolish the TGA, right? Our policy is to split it in 3. 1, the funding side of it goes back to Treasury. 2, you have an approvals process, but 2, the vaccine injury side of it, and where you review that, is separated from the TGA that actually, from the body that actually approves the vaccine. But getting rid of it altogether is complete madness. What are we going to just let Big Pharma, sell any drug into the market without any regulation? It's like completely impractical. And that's where there's a few chinks in their armour. They can tend to sort of have policies that don't align with some of their rhetoric, i.e. BlackRock and superannuation. And, well, okay, let's shut the TGA down. But if you do that, then who's going to regulate Big Pharma? The answer, it's like we don't want to do what we did with the car industry where we go, oh, well, we can't compete, so we're going to shut it down. No, that's not the answer. The answer is to solve the problem. the answer isn't walking away from the problem. We've got to solve the problem. And that's, that was one of the first things we came out with at People First, is we wanted to be a party that finds a solution for every problem, not a party that finds a problem in every solution. And it's that sort of attitude. So I'll say to you now, and I know I might offend some listeners here, whilst I'm happy to get out of the World Health Organization, People First won't support getting out of the United Nations. We want to be at the table of the United Nations, pushing back on, stupid wars. That was the purpose of the United Nations. And, this is the problem. Yet again, it's like the TGA. We want to reform the United Nations so that it stops wars. It doesn't allow things like the Iraq war to happen. It doesn't allow things like the Ukraine war to happen. It doesn't allow things like the Israel-Palestine conflict to happen, whereby we see millions of lives being killed needlessly. Having travelled the world myself, I can tell you there's one common interest amongst all of us, and that's we all hate our government. People in every country hate their government, because the sort of people that get into government are nothing but, toady yes men, blowhards, who, once they're in there, are more interested in power for the sake of it rather than empowering people. And that's why, we will take a slightly different approach to, a lot of the minor parties where it's like, we don't want to be a part of this, we don't want to sit at the table. I'm not going to ask for your vote, only then to get to Canberra and say, well, we're not going to collaborate with anyone. We do have to collaborate. We aren't an island in the world, and we have to build relationships so that we can influence outcomes. You look at David Pocock. I mean, he's been lucky in the sense that he was never branded a whack job, like we have, like climate deniers, anti-vaxxers or whatever. But we need to get a situation whereby, we have so many followers on the right that we can't be ignored and we can't be ridiculed. And that's what we want to try and do at People First, is come across as professional, polished, compassionate, empowering. And I know some of these are emotive terms, but they're positive, feel-good terms, because we need vision in this country. We need to bring back hope. We need to bring back optimism, because a lot of people out there have given up on this country, and we can't do that. We can't quit, because you know what? Our forefathers built this country, and they faced fires, floods and droughts. They would have been on their knees many times. But you know what? They never gave up. They kept fighting so that their children could have a better life. And that's what we have to do as well. And it all starts, the first words I ever spoke in my Hansard in my Senate career was self-belief. I forget what it was now. Self-belief, is all nations are built on self-belief, and we have to believe in ourselves so that we can, provide a better life for our children. So that's where we want to be, I guess, rather than just sort of sitting on the sidelines whinging all the time. And I'm not saying one nation do that all the time. They don't, but we can't fall into the same trap of the major parties where all they do is fight each other and not focus on solutions. And that's what we want to be. We want to focus on solutions that solve the problems and empower people so that we can regain our country, regain our wealth, and make sure we leave our children with a better life.
Johnny.
And Gerard, I suppose the fact that you did have such support during the pre-selection for the Senate seat, do you think that a lot of those Liberal people will come across to you, and maybe even conservative Labor voters that are fed up with the Albaneses and Peter Duttons of this world basically running a vanilla mix?
Oh, absolutely. I think I'll get a lot of support from LNP party members, but there's only 10,000 LNP party members, and there's probably going to be over 1 million people that vote for the LNP. A lot of people will just go in and vote for the LNP and won't know anything about that pre-selection process. So obviously, while I appreciate the support I get from my colleagues and members of the LNP, and I have lots of them telling me they're going to put me first. The sad fact is that a lot of people won't know what really happened. I mean, a lot will, and that's what we're up against. I mean, while I'm sort of popular, there was a poll the other day from Joel Jamal and Turning Point, on Facebook between myself and Malcolm, and I did quite well on that. That's still only, you're up against. It's not just myself and Malcolm. We've got to remember, myself and Malcolm are up against the LNP. And a lot of people will just vote the LNP or Labor out of pure apathy or the fact that they believe that the minor parties aren't the solution. And this is really important as well. A lot of parties do hold the view that the minor parties aren't the solution. And this comes back to what I was talking about before, whereby we need to make sure that we want to become the party that all these people that say vote in the middle and want this comfortable, tend to look at the majors as being a credible organisation, will also vote for us because they see us as an alternative, a viable alternative as well.
And how much of that sentiment do you think will be out in the community about needing to keep the bastards honest? I mean, Dutton isn't performing as well as people might have expected for whatever reason. I think he's been captured by the wokes. But do you think that people are going to say, well, look, if we're going to end up with a teal green Albanese government, are we more likely to vote for people like Gerard Rennick in the Senate to make sure that there is some common sense in our parliament? Because otherwise it'll just be a fiasco.
Well, John, that's a very good question. I think it'll go everywhere. I think it'll be a fire hose. And my biggest fear is the legalised cannabis party could even jag the donkey vote to win. They got 5% last time. They actually outpolled Clive Palmer, who spent $100 million. And, UAP put up a solid effort last time. That 4.5% or 4.3, whatever it was, that's still a big vote. That's 160,000 people. And yet, the legalised cannabis party got something like 200,000 people. And legalising cannabis is a state issue. So it's a real concern and this is why I've sort of changed my mind from compulsory voting, because a lot of people in our voting who wouldn't vote otherwise, and they're just voting with the donkey vote. And that's the thing, that donkey vote's going to skew either to the major parties who are more of the same, more foreign debt, less productivity, higher taxes, higher income taxes, or it goes the other way where you're going to get the legalised cannabis party. So it was quite terrifying up here in Queensland last time how they managed to jag 5% with next to no campaigning. And I'm not taking them personally, I'm sure they're nice people, but you're just like, geez, I mean, was that an apathetic? I mean, look, I know that there's a lot of people who really want to legalise cannabis too, but so I don't know where it's going to end up, John. I'm with you though. Peter has underperformed in this campaign, and I think it started to slip before. Ever since the cyclone up here, his support seems to have dropped, and it's continued to drop. And Peter I think he's feeling it. I can tell. I know him well enough to know. I think he's when he feels under pressure and he Peter, probably hasn't got a lot of inner confidence in himself, to be honest with you, in my view. And when he sort of feels under pressure, that inner lack of confidence starts to show, and he's made a few sort of mistakes, or he just doesn't come across with the same conviction when he's feeling confident. And we're all like that, right? Albanese's running around smug as as the Cheshire, grinning like a Cheshire cat. 6 months ago he was all over the shop because his confidence levels were low. So it is really, really, it's politics can be a fickle thing. I mean, I was like that today. I lost my pre-selection in the LNP. I got an email late at night where they pulled 4 of my voters out, and I knew the stitch up was on, and I was really just ropeable. Got about 2 hours sleep, and I just never recovered. I was just dopey as anything throughout the day, and it was literally, I'd probably have 15 days a year out of that where I'm not on my game, but that was one of those days. So, you've only sort of got to have a bit of a, off day, as they say, it's a bit like, one of these days I'm going to stuff up in the chamber. I just know it with all these divisions. And, I hope it's not a bad one that I'll stuff up on because, that does keep me awake at night if I do get back in. It's sort of when you're on the crossbench and they're doing these guillotines and they're making 30 amendments in 1 hour. And they don't read out the words to the amendment. They just say amendment number 6, 7, 8, 9. And you're sort of like, well, hang on, which amendment was that? Some of these things are double negatives and, they're meant to be. So you've got to try and work out, they'll reverse the amendment. They'll try and amend an amendment that was amended. So, you've really got to be on your game with some of these amendments, hey. So anyway, but back to your original question, I've sort of gone off on a bit of a wander there, but, Yeah, look, it'll go everywhere, John. I don't know. Look, other than one thing I will say, I do predict that the major party's primary vote will continue to decline, but just by how much I couldn't tell you.
Mm.
Yeah, I've got to say too, Jared, that there are a lot of minority groups, real minority groups that have a real axe to grind, and rightfully so. We've seen apologies to the stolen generation years after the event. We've seen apologies to the victims of thalidomide years after the event. We're desperate for government that's going to take the moral high ground on making sure the minorities of people who've been injured by government are serviced. And I'm talking about vaccine injuries, and I'm
Yeah,
particularly I'm very pro the cause of infected bloods,
yeah,
Australia, and I know that you've been a champion of that. Malcolm's raised it also in estimates. Um, these people need justice, and we need to know that we have politicians who are going to continue to stand for the minority groups. And it just seems that our governments just seem hell bent on waiting till everyone dies before they do anything, and then they come out with a half-assed apology, and we're fed up with it.
yeah.
These people need to be serviced, they need to be looked after, they need to be recompensed, and they need to be healed. And we just and to watch Katie Gallagher carry on in estimates so flippantly about the people who've suffered from infected bloods and all of those other issues that she's on about. It just sickens me, and I'm completely done with it. So I know you've been a champion of that, and I thank you on behalf of the infected bloods people for doing that. But where do we go getting the bureaucrats to take this stuff seriously?
Oh, we just have to keep raising it and raising it until we get a groundswell movement that it becomes a strong enough force politically. And that's why, I don't sort of want to make this about me, but this a vote this vote in Queensland, if you're a Queenslander and you really believe strongly about those COVID vaccine mandates, this is the election to do it because obviously I was at the forefront of it. And if I'm gone, then that's it. Like, there's really not going to be. Ralph Babbitt wasn't there at the time. Alex is sort of antic who made a strong stand. He's pretty much gagged by the party, and there's myself and Craig Kelly. So if you're in New South Wales, vote for Craig Kelly. If you're in Victoria, vote for Chris Neil, and if you're in Queensland, vote for me, because all three of us have fought the fight very hard on that. And this is where it matters. So this is where the rubber hits the turf. Forget all these petitions and getting out of the UN and all this stuff. That shouting at the clouds about foreign bodies and that, this is where it matters. Make your vote count. And if you're vaccine injured, someone's vaccine injured, if you lost your job through mandates, if you got locked up in a hotel for 2 weeks, if you couldn't cross the border to see one of your relatives die, this is where we have to maintain the rage, and we have to maintain the rage throughout the ballot box. Actually, I should do a selfie myself to camera on this matter. And it's not just, mind you, infected blood and the vaccine injured. It's also the mesh injuries, for example. There's people suffering from Lyme disease. That's another issue. There's a couple of other things. We've got a ridiculous fire ant issue going on up here in Queensland where properties are being sprayed with their no fire ants. Completely unnecessary. I mean, by all means, if you see a fire ant nest, spray it. But going around where it's not needed. We've got farmers up in Mackay, who've had their rate increases jump by, say, 27,000 to 67,000 because we've just got an out of control state government that's just screwing farmers to the ground. There's so many sort of like these micro groups where they're just getting shafted, and because they're only a small percentage of the population, they can't really get their voices heard. And I guess that's one thing about my social media platform. It is growing. I've got over 500,000 followers across all platforms now. It's up to about 550. And if I get another 6 years, I can grow that over 1 million and really start to take it up to the mainstream media as well. Because that's another thing that I probably should be putting in there is the power of social media and the need if for example I don't get back in, then those 500,000 followers will eventually fade away just because I'm not constantly reporting and being seen to be fighting the fight. It's not that easy to fight the fight if you don't have a voice in Parliament to whether it be in chamber or the estimates to push back on. So we've really got to keep pushing on that as well.
Johnny.
Well, I think that's such a great point, Gerard. And look, and I really do hope that people that are going to vote for you guys, for yourself and Craig Kelly and Chris Neal, that you get the advice and take the pamphlet on how to do it properly, because we don't want a situation where the vote's wasted. That happens so many times. People go in there with the intention of voting for someone and then they end up making a mistake. That's something we don't want to happen. And people in New
Yeah,
South Wales obviously can't vote for you. They can only vote for you in Queensland. People, I know that sounds very simple, but people can't. Some people just don't understand how the voting system works. So it's very important that you look for those people in your respective states. So if you're in Queensland, Gerard Rennick. If you're in New South Wales, you look for Craig Kelly and the Libertarians. And if you're in Victoria, as Gerard said, you look for Chris Neal and Gerard's party. So I think that's really, really important. And then, people like Joel Jamal are actually putting out how to vote things as well, which is really helpful to people and Australians. For Australians, they're another organisation. So yeah, there's a lot of good things about, but one thing that just from my heart is that the man on your screen, Senator Gerard Rennick, has been the absolute shining light, in my opinion, in the Australian Parliament in this last session, and from somebody that didn't have to stand up against vaccine mandates, it's certainly brought you a lot of trouble, hasn't it? It's cost your career with the Liberal Party, undoubtedly, and you've put a great deal personally on the line and at risk, and the people should be aware of that. And it's so important that we keep Gerard in Parliament.
yeah, thanks, John. Look, I mean, I haven't suffered as much as the people who've been injured, the people who've lost their jobs. I've been lucky. I didn't get injured. I didn't get lose my job, and that's I always that's to keep a reality check there. So it's not me that suffered. It's all those people that place trust in their government. I had the benefit of inside knowledge, they can trust the as far as grow them. Um, uh, but that's why I feel compelled to keep fighting. I mean, I couldn't walk away when they shafted me in my pre-selection either, because I owed it to those people keep fighting, because the stuff I know, I'm still, I'm still maintaining the rage, sharing the rage with all those people that have been injured. And it's not, and like there's, and I've only touched the tip of the iceberg. We've got people that have been screwed by the banks. Africa's becoming a real issue now. Another big concern is that what's going on in recruitment in the military. It is like I've had a few emails about 12 months ago about, from parents, veterans themselves whose children couldn't get into the military, and they were like shocked. Not only because they were stuffed around for 12 to 18 months, but then they eventually got knocked back, and these, nothing wrong with these kids, good attitudes, multi-generational veteran families getting knocked back. And there has been a tsunami of people getting knocked back from the military at a time when we're struggling to recruit people from the military. Now, I hate to impute motive, but I'm at the point where it's almost like, well, this doesn't make sense. It's almost as though it's deliberate, because you just can't, if you're short of, finding it difficult to recruit people, we're knocking these people back. And I've heard from too many, it was a bit like the vaccine injuries. I knew within a very short period of time, this wasn't just a isolated thing. This was, rampant throughout the population. Well, it's similar with sort of what's going on in defence, because I've heard from so many people now. So I want to have a Senate inquiry into recruitment in the military as well, because there's real issues there. And another policy, I haven't made an official policy yet, but I think we need to bring, we've got to bring back the military apprenticeship scheme, whereby, so you can go to ADFA and get a degree in the military, but you can't go and get an apprenticeship in the military anymore. I'll stand to be corrected on that, but apparently that was abolished in the early 90s. And I think we need to bring back a military engineering corps that, one civil engineering corps that builds roads and maintains roads, our federal highways, and one that actually builds power stations and looks after telecommunications and things like that. And that apprenticeship scheme could actually, they could build their own mess hall and their own barracks, and then they've got places to live. Sure, it's not the, necessarily the swankiest place when you're young, but, I went to boarding school for a couple of years. You get used to it, have a good time with your mates. And it provides food and accommodation while our young men and women are doing their apprenticeships, because we need to get more people back on the tools. Because if we're going to get out of this country, if I had to give you one word, how to rebuild our country, it's, get our country back on track, it's basically to build dams, build power stations, build better roads, build more ports, build more airports, telecommunications, and all of those things will then increase productivity. I mean, productivity is this mother statement that's thrown around, but if you really want to, people say, what is productivity? I'll tell you what it is. It's building. Building stuff, real stuff, not the paper castles like superannuation in those ivory palaces in Sydney or Melbourne, but real, not financial engineers, but real civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers.
Mm.
Well, there's a screaming need for statesmanship in this country, and I've been asking a lot of people in the last few months, who was our last great statesman, and everyone goes back all the way to Menzies. Bob Menzies, and he wasn't all that popular either. I mean, I remember the days of Pig Iron Bob when he was selling scrap iron to the Japanese during World War II. And but all those things, we still haven't had a statesman. We haven't had it. We haven't had somebody who's prepared to call it like it is. And you're sounding more like that every time I talk to you, Gerard. I've got to admit that. And that's what we need. The sad part is the two-party system in this country stinks. The whole parliamentary system is rotten to the core as far as I'm concerned, because the people don't get a say in anything. It's always the party politics that takes over.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and it's entrenched by a mainstream media as well, who focus on the two major parties all the time. I used to get in the press a fair bit when I was a part of the Liberal Party, but since I've left it, they just don't want to know me, and that includes Sky News as well. As Rowan Dean's probably the only exception there.
Yeah.
But don't want to know me at all. And yeah, it's a real problem, and that's actually another one of our policies. Is we want to bring back the cross media ownership laws to break up what I call the big three, which is the ABC, News Corp, and Fairfax 9, because they control probably 85% of the mainstream media, and probably 90% or 95% of the news content. In terms of political news content, so that narrative is very tightly defined. You're either and that's the sort of ABC are the left, the Murdoch press is the right, and then sort of Fairfax 9 sort of straddle the middle ground, but not enough diversity of views there either.
I'm pretty encouraged, and I hate to admit it, by the Seven Spotlight program's expose on electric vehicles done by Liam Bartlett, also covered by 2GB Ben Fordham. We've just had a look at.
Yeah, just had the lights go out. All right, just give us a second.
You're right, mate.
Mary wanted something funny.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that's really interesting, because I was segueing into Blackout Bowen. That's a beautiful segue into Blackout Bowen, because I think he is really in for a fight, and he's in Werriwa, isn't he, John?
No,
Peter McMahon.
Right, McMahon, that's right. So he's in for a real fight. Matt Camonzouli's going to take him on there as well. I think Bowen's on really tedious ground, especially with this report coming out on Spotlight.
Yeah, I hope he does. He should not be in politics, that guy. I mean, he was a minister in the Rudd government that was saw the boats overboard. He was was he the shadow treasurer or the treasurer under Bill Shorten, when he said, he told the retirees not to vote for you if you didn't worry about your franking credits. He has had some clangers in his life. And he's one of these earlier point. I think he was the mayor of wherever he grew up in. Whichever Western Sydney suburb he grew up in, and then he went straight into politics at a very young age. And that guy just has no emotional radar whatsoever. Completely driven by ideology. It's just incredible. I mean, I cannot get over. We are basically shutting down our own domestic sources of energy and then importing foreign-made renewables that are 70% foreign-owned. Mind you, I can believe it, because that's what we did in 1985 when Port Keating relaxed capital controls. Basically, we stopped using our own equity in the form of retained earnings and just let the foreign banks step in and lend money to us and then we let foreigners come in and buy our infrastructure. And somehow that was all in the name of competition and free markets. Well, to me, it was just meant, more, it was actually, just in slavery, to the globalist narrative. That's what ended up. That's where we've ended up as a result of it.
Well, I drove from LA down to Phoenix, a 6 hour drive.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, Jared, for about 2 hours, we passed non-stop solar farms. They were everywhere. You just couldn't see the countryside for solar panels. And then when we left Phoenix to head across to Tennessee, we drove for several hours through New Mexico and Texas and non-stop wind turbines, mate. It was the most diabolical sight you've ever seen, and everyone hates them. And most of them aren't turning. They're just sitting there, a blight on the landscape. And the people of the US hate these things. I mean, it's just not going to work, is it?
No, it's not. No, and it'll ultimately end up whereby the energy grid collapses, and once that collapses, it's all over.
Yeah.
And it's here in Australia, we're getting away with it because coal-powered fire stations are still powering, over 50% of the energy supply, but that is declining. And once where it'll start to kick in, it's not because we're building more renewables. It's when they start shutting down coal-powered fire stations, or coal-fired power stations. I'm getting it back around wrong way, sorry. But you'll notice they keep deferring that because they know the moment, I think what was the one, Earring, is that how you pronounce it in New South Wales? They delayed the closure of that one because they know if they close that one in New South Wales, and I think they delayed another one in Victoria, that's it. Like suddenly the volatility and instability in the grid is going to get out of control. We're lucky up here in Queensland, we've got younger power stations that have probably got another 15, 20 years of life in them. And are chewing homemade coal that, so out of Kogan Creek and Toorong Power Station, the coal that's put into those power stations is actually owned by the Queensland people. You don't have to buy it; it's there in the ground, and it's what they call a coal mouth power station, whereby it's effectively you just dig it up and tip it straight into the power station. So that's why it's so cheap. That's why they put the power stations in Hunter Valley because there's good rich black coal there as well.
Mm.
And it is incredibly efficient, and that was one of our competitive advantages against Asia when we used to engage in manufacturing, was that we had access to cheap energy. And so we're not just destroying our energy grid in the sense that and that's causing higher power prices and higher inflation. We're removing our natural advantages in terms of being able to compete in manufacturing. Um, you know, and we're never going to get manufacturing back unless we get cheap, reliable energy. No amount of solar panels and wind turbines can power a big industrial manufacturing site.
No, that's dead right. And they're finding that in America too. They really are. As I said, it's really on the nose over there. Johnny, final question?
Well, look, Gerard, I think it'd be nice if you put you on the spot here, but if you could relay a funny story about your time in Parliament. Is there something that sort of stands out
Oh,
as being, did you see Katie Gallagher, walk into the men's toilet by mistake, or what?
you
What?
know what? There's something there. You got me on the spot there because there's something funny the other day. Um, I have had some funny moments, but I'm now my mind's blanked because I was sitting there the other day. Oh no, that was something else. Yeah. No, look, John, I've actually, for those of you listeners, I used to love a good have a beer and all that sort of stuff, but I stopped drinking when I became a senator. I did go to the first Christmas party in 2019, but that was it. Because effectively this is a very important role, and I just have never wanted to get caught out drinking or you know, or if people try and accuse me of doing something that I didn't do, if I'm sober, I can always defend myself because that is the type of world we live in. Um, I'm just trying to think of what is funny. Look, I could probably think of something. It'll come to me now that I'm thinking about it, it won't come to me. But, look, I mean, I've made a few good friends. I mean, Alex Antic, that friendship, this isn't a funny story, but I have a really, really good friendship with Alex Antic. I mean, he's a solid guy.
Mm.
You know, and I don't want to put him on the spot yet, but let's just say he's a very, very, very solid guy. He's a top mate of mine. And I'll certainly miss him if I'm not. I'll tell you what, he'll miss me more too if I'm not down there. And Matt Canavan, those two guys are the two standout senators for me. Both are very erudite, polished. Um, I wouldn't hesitate in trying poaching them if I did get back in, because the three of us working together, along, if I could poach Moira Deeming in Victoria. I mean, I'm hearing the Wets are trying to roll her in Victoria. I mean, this is the bloody Liberal Party for you. This is the problem with the Liberal Party, is that there's always this cancer inside them that are constantly trying to tip out good Conservatives. And so if those rumours are true about what they're trying to do to her in Victoria, I'm just like, there's always a place for you in People First, Moira. If you do get tipped out, I kind of hope she does, but I hope she doesn't too. Like, I don't want to see her have to go through what I went through. So, yeah, but look, they're good guys. Not everyone, is on the other side is all bad. Some of our guys are bad. Yeah, if I
What
think of
about some
some.
of these? What about some of these poor buggers that you've grilled in the Senate estimates? I mean, how do they react after some of the Skerritts of the world? Do they have a cup of tea?
Look, the only one I really sort of half knew, oh, I didn't know him that well, but Larry Marshall. Larry Marshall is a good one. He was the head of the CSIRO. Okay, actually, here's the story. Okay, I'll let you. This is a scoop. Righto. So I asked Larry Marshall some questions early on. I wish he was there, because I'd like to ask him some more questions, actually. And I did see him after estimates. So I just went around and said, look, don't take it personally. I'm Gerard, blah, blah, blah. And he had a pretty prestigious history. He's got 20 patents and a pretty smart guy. And I said, I'm just, testing the models. And he said to me, models are like masturbation. They're not as good as the real thing. And I've actually had that term in my head ever since then. And it's true, that's what models are. But that was the head of the CSIRO telling me that. But yet, I could never get him to admit that climate change was crap in estimates. He helped me out a few times. He was the one that answered the question about 40, there being 40, or was it, well, he was there, I think it was him, said there were 40 different models. And that was his nod of the head to me when he said that, he was saying, well, you be the, because then I came back with the obvious questions. I thought, isn't the science settled? Because I did say to him in that I only posted it again a couple of weeks ago. I said something about, I said to him, you're a big fan of models or something, because I knew what he really thought of models. Because in science, it's the law, right? It's laws you follow, not models. You've got to follow laws. And these laws have been set down by Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Max Planck, Maxwell, Faraday, all these guys, right? I mean, they keep saying, listen to the scientists. Very few scientists today lay down the laws that these guys did back then. Sorry, I'm just wobbling around here because I'm trying to keep an ice pack behind the phone before it self explodes, because I've been on the phone all day. Yeah, so that was a funny comment, and I was quite shocked when he said it. But it's a shame though that I could never get him to say it in estimates, because he really should have said that. That would have been great. Look, I've had people, I've had a lot of whistleblowers come to me. I met one guy, that Leppington Triangle crap about the Morrison government paying $30 million for a block of land that was worth 3. That was complete utter rubbish. 30 acres of land, being worth 3 million. You're saying 1 acre of land is worth 100,000. I quickly did the sums on it. 1 acre of land is 4,000 square metres. So you're saying that a 500 square metre block in Sydney, and the last piece of flat basin in Sydney, is worth $12,500. Don't think so. But the bloke that they stitched up on that was a inside political hit job by the Labor Party and the AFP. Now, a whistleblower, the AFP raided his house on a Sunday night and strip searched him in front of his kids for doing nothing wrong. So there's some nasty stuff that goes on there. And I mean, we obviously know that with the injuries and everything, but, there are good people within the bureaucracy. I should say this, and that's why we also want to bring in whistleblower protection laws, because, like all these, like everyone, had to take the jab, and that a lot of us, a lot of people have mortgages, and they'd love to give their middle finger to the boss. And this is why we've got to, really get people paying those mortgages off by the time they're 40, not by the, not still, or 45 rather than 60, so that, they, and later in life, when they finally, they've been through the, they've come up through the ranks, and they can see the crap for what it is, are in positions to say, well, I don't have to put up with this anymore. I'll walk away. But when they're drowning in debt, they can't do that. So yeah, look, it's been, and the other big thing is I've realised, what true corruption is. We tend to think of, there's two types of corruption. There's big C corruption, the old brown paper bag. Of course, there's not so much of that anymore. It's more the red tape, green tape, black tape, blue tape. The corruption is all the rules and regulations that are created by bureaucracies to justify their existence. But the more insidious form of corruption is what I call the small C corruption. And that is where people in positions of authority who have a fiduciary duty and responsibility, so the good one here is politicians, they walk past calling out, what they should call out. And the old, Jim Molan, said to me a few times, he'd say quite often, he said, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really bad in politics. I mean, it's bad across all leadership positions today. People just won't stand up and do the right thing. There's no integrity in the system.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, I'll relay a quick story, a very quick one. I got approached by a former AFP officer who had to leave the police due to not being vaccinated, had a pre-existing medical condition. I'm told that the three doctors that wrote the exemptions for that person were investigated by APRA, even though the pre-existing medical exemption was pre-COVID and documented. But they were later told by another fellow AFP officer, and this is for Peter Dutton to refute, that it wasn't actually the commissioner who was pushing for the mandate in the AFP. It was the minister, and the minister was Peter Dutton. Now,
Right.
I'd be interested to hear from Peter Dutton on that as to whether that's the case. Apparently, it wasn't Kershaw that was. He was apparently pushing back against it, and that
Right.
from someone very reliable within the system. So this is the
Yeah.
sort of garbage that goes on. We need to get to the bottom of all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, we do. And I just had someone, a whistleblower that I've been talking to over the years from the TGA. We were in a bit of an email conversation today because he doesn't like my policy. I know I disagree with him about splitting our TGA up, but he said, I can assure you there was a lot of political pressure on the TGA throughout that rollout. And look, I have no doubt there is, but you know what? Get in there and estimate, make a decision, do what I did where I just withheld my vote. Get in there one day and say, you know what, I'm going to have a falling down moment in estimates, or I'm going to go there and I'm going to say, this was a political decision. If you're John Skerritt, come out and say, even though, I've been told to do this by Scott Morrison or Greg Hunt. I disagree with it. I'm quitting on the spot. Here are estimates.
Well, just on that, Gerard, I believe, I'd be like every other viewer out there that watches you in estimates and is so frustrated by these bureaucrats avoiding the truth. It is so infuriating. Now, that estimate should be under oath.
Well, it is under oath.
Well,
they're meant to go to bloody jail if they're not telling the truth. I tried to get Skerritt censored and I couldn't get the numbers to get him censored. Hang on, I'm not using the right word. There's a word there, it's something like that, in the Senate, and I couldn't get that to happen because there was no numbers. And this is the thing. I mean, this is why the Unit Party. I mean, I said to someone today, I hate the Liberal Party more than the Labor Party at the moment because the Labor Party don't pretend to be anything else but crazy communist / Marxist or whatever. But the Liberal Party still holds this, and this idea that they're freedom fighters and they're not. And that's, like they're not true to themselves. And that's I sometimes think, I mean, it would have been better if Labor were in power when COVID was introduced so that the Liberal Party did what it should have been doing and calling out all the excess, buying 300 million jabs for a country of 25 million people, 12 doses per person, when you're telling everyone two doses were safe and effective. I mean, that cost $8 billion. If you'd bought 50 million doses or 75 million doses to say have a spare dose for every person, you could have saved $6 billion. And then there was another case there where they blew up $100 million on masks and gowns that went to Cyprus. I mean, the whole thing, economically we can see it was just absurd, but, it was the same thing in the health decisions they were making. They banned the use of antibiotics. Actually, one of the big saddest things about everyone sort of talking about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine was they missed the one that would have woke a lot of people up was that they banned the use of azithromycin which was a standard 3-tablet antibiotic that you give to all, you give to people who have a bacterial infection. Now, had we known, and I've got to thank Jicky for that. I won't say his real name, but he picked up on that and he told me about it. But that was one, because everyone knows, there's nothing wrong with antibiotics. I mean, if they're suddenly banning antibiotics, it's like, why are you doing this? Is this so that you can use your vaccines and not antibiotics? And of course, I asked the TJ about it in estimates and go, it causes heart injury. So anyway, I went back and looked at the history of azithromycin, and it's been used since the late 70s, early 80s. It was in patent until about 2008, 2009, and then or somewhere around that time. And then bugger me, about a year after it went out of patent, there was a study that came out and said it impacts the heart. And I was like, no, it doesn't. It's just you're just saying that so that you're selling another drug that's under patent again. But yeah, because I wanted to look into that, and I thought that's weird. I've never heard of antibiotics. I mean, I think it's true that some people can have reactions to antibiotics. My son's allergic to penicillin, for example. I didn't know that was a thing until he came around. But yeah, it's just there's some sneaky, really devious stuff that went down and does go down in politics. And believe you me, when they say power corrupts, it does. And I've seen people do things that I'm sure they, if they were asked, they'd do it before they got in. They'd say, no, we'd never do that. But they have. And yet again, they're not doing it. It's the fact that they're not standing up. It's not that they're actively doing it. It's the fact that they're not actively standing up against it. So it's that passive, it's not acceptance of it. That is actually the evil. And there's a saying for that. I can't think of it, but that's what it is. It's not. It's sort of like you saw someone getting beat up on the street and you walk past. It's it's the classic case of the Good Samaritan. A lot of people will walk past someone and not do the right thing. Yeah.
Well, I guess we've kept you long enough, Gerard. You're flat out. We know that, and we so appreciate your time. Thanks for being willing to come on. You always are, and we appreciate that. And we just really. I got to tell you, I hope you kick butt. I really do.
Yes, thanks, Graham. Well, thanks for your support, and John and Graham, thanks for your support over the years as well. I really appreciate it. And to all your listeners tonight, thanks very much for your support. If I do get back in, I will keep fighting. I hope I can be effective. Ultimately, that's what counts, but I'll certainly try my hardest.
Well, mate, I think you've made your bed, because even if you don't get in this time round, you can't let this party go that you've started. It's got potential. So I guess you're going to be in the public eye for quite a while yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's hope the party grows. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we thank you for coming on. John and I'll wrap up the show. We'll let you go and not keep you any longer. Thanks again. And we look forward to having you on again, hopefully before the election.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Okay. God bless you.
All right.
So there you have it, John.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the guy.
No, look, Hoodie, he's been one of a number of tremendous representatives in Canberra, and you spoke fondly tonight of Russell Broadbent, another magnificent. They call him the father of the house now, I suppose. And look, we're hopeful that he does win his seat in Monash as an independent. He's got our full support down there for sure. But we need these sort of people in Parliament, Hoodie. Otherwise, we're dead in the water.
We are indeed, John. And it's, these are interesting times in the few weeks we've got left. Lots of issues we can discuss, and we will be discussing. Tomorrow night, we'll be interviewing Craig Kelly.
Yep.
Looking forward to that. And also tomorrow morning, Johnny, we're getting up early at 7 a.m. because we're interviewing Trevor Loudon from the United States. Excuse me, I'm just sucking on a fisherman's friend, who wrote a book called Comrade PM, Prime Minister, which is an expose on Anthony Albanese. And I think it's going to be a very interesting interview, and a lot of people are going to tune into that because, I don't know, I've been watching Albanese smirk when people from the public put questions to him in the street. I'm sorry, he's a grub.
Yeah.
He's a grub. I mean, if you can't talk to the constituents who have concerns about housing and immigration, and you just fob it off and you get your minders to force them out of the way, you're a grub. And also, there was that photo that was put out today with Wayne Swan, Julia Gillard, and Tanya Plibersek that had the background blacked out, John. And when we checked out the background, it was taken inside the chairman's lounge at Qantas. They're grubs, John. They are grubs, and the people have had enough of these clowns. Bowen, your history.
Mm, mm.
And the country better off for it. I mean, it's just mind blowing.
Well, I'll tell you what, Hoodie, I think the Bowen situation will be one of those moments in Australian history where you'll look back and say, what were you doing the day we won the America's Cup? Uh, where were you, the day the Olympics were announced? Where were you the day that Chris Bowen got booted out of Parliament? That's how significant this is. This bloke is one of the greatest
Grubs.
parasites, grubs, to ever be elected to an Australian Parliament. He's never struck a blow. He is just a climate psycho, and the sooner they vote him out there, the better. That this country will be better off. I mean, as you said during that interview there, Hoodie, with Gerard, I mean, that Liam Bartlett expose on what's going on in relation to those batteries alone should be enough to send this Labor Party and the Liberal Party, for that matter, and this woke net zero garbage and all this nonsense to the wall. Nobody should be voting for these drongos.
No, they shouldn't be. And once again, it'll be 50 years' time. They'll be saying, "Oh, we're sorry we made those decisions, and we want to make a formal apology." We're sick of the ship sailing. I keep raising Infected Bloods Australia because we have to keep standing up for the people who have complied with the government, and listen to the narrative, who've then been dumped on the scrap heap. I mean, it's enough already. Enough. The vaccine injured. I mean, it just goes on and on. Nobody's cared about in this country. The only people who care about anything is the politicians who care about themselves. And that's why the likes of Gerard Rennick stand out.
Mm.
Chris Bowen, you're welcome to come on and defend yourself. But we'd love to have you on, but I promise you we won't be going easy on you because you're a grub. You're just a grub. And I'd love to see Matt Camonzuli roll you. I really would. And John, we're hoping to talk to Matt Camonzuli, are we not?
Yeah, we'll see how we go. I know he's pretty busy between now and election day, but we'll certainly put the feelers out to him. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, other good news, Warren Treadray, AFL superstar from South Australia and Channel 9 commentator who lost his job with Channel 9 because he wouldn't be vaccinated, has decided to break his silence and come onto Club Grubbery and talk about what happened. Looking forward to that, Treaders. He's a great bloke, and I can't wait for that interview. And we've got some other great interviews coming up as well. I mean, the calendar's filling up pretty quick, John.
Yeah, we were back to one show a week, weren't we, Hoodie?
We did go back to one show a week. After the election, we might come back to 2 shows a week.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll do what we need to do.
But also, now Mary, our good friend from Buderim in Queensland, John made a valiant effort to get Gerard to laugh, get him to laugh, and he did laugh. Now I noticed him laugh 3 times, and so there you go, Mary. We did our best. I think we succeeded. So we want a green tick from you, Johnny. Also, our love and our prayers are going out to Michael Gray Griffith, who cops a lot of flack, but all he's wanting to do is tell the story of real Australians and everything that's happened in the last 4 years. And our thoughts and prayers are with you, Michael, and whatever we can do to support you, we will.
That piece of writing he did, Hoodie, just as a sideline to that little article that he put up on his Facebook post that he wrote from his hospital bed. I mean, that has to almost be one of the greatest pieces of literature that have been put out during this whole mess in the last 5 years. Really beautiful, straight from the heart. And what was really amazing about it, Hoodie, was Michael's using his journey as he sees it now to essentially let people know that the other side, the hospital system that we've been so frightened of and so scared of because of the treatment that's being dealt out in there, it's not as it seems, and people shouldn't be as concerned. And he talks about how he's had conversations with nurses and doctors on the other side in the hospital system, and what a beautiful experience it's been for him. So yeah, it's really as you say, our prayers and thoughts are with Michael, and yeah, he's announced today that he's having a three-way bypass, which a lot of people in Australia obviously have each year, but they're not without their risks. So we're certainly thinking of you, mate.
Absolutely. And John, we've been saying all along, it's not the people who do the frontline work in the hospitals that are the issue. It's the bureaucracies that run the hospitals, the policy setters and the policy police in the hospitals. When if a government decides to increase funding to the hospital system in its state by, let's say, $500 million, the people are sick and tired of, $400 million going to increase the bureaucracy and $100 million going to, add a few beds here and there. We've got to reduce the bureaucracy. We've got to reduce the government. We've got to reduce the HR departments and the policy setters and get the money where it needs to go to the people where they need it. I'm married to a nurse. You're married to a nurse. You're a frontline worker. You know the caliber of the people that work in the hospital system. You know it. They're good people.
Second to none. Yeah.
Second to none. And that they care. Nurses care. Doctors care. Some of them are rogues. We know that to be a fact. But that's the same in any profession. Even in aviation, there are rogue pilots out there. And, we've got to watch out for them. And talking about that, Qantas is just, oh, mate. Some of the reports I'm seeing out of Qantas are just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Anyhow, that's another story we've got to cover eventually, but it is what it is. So looking forward to some great interviews. Johnny, I'll close with a customary prayer, if you're happy, mate.
All good, buddy.
Lord Father in heaven, we thank you that we're back on air again. We thank you for this incredible interview we've just had with Gerard Rennick. And Lord, we just pray that that the caliber of people like Gerard and those others who he mentioned get up and get some things happening in this country, because, Father, we need it. We need the people to be supported by their representatives and not by self-interest. So, Father God, we ask and pray that you would be with our country and help us to overcome the issues that lay ahead of us, because they are appearing to be insurmountable, but we know that they're not if we trust in you. So be with us, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And just to yell out to Sal too, Hoodie, after a knee replacement. I haven't had a chance to talk to her in the last couple of weeks, but I'm hoping she's going well up in Tumbarumba. I'm sure she is.
Tumbarumba Sal.
Yep. I'll talk to you soon, Sal. Been meaning to call you, but I just haven't got around to it.
Yeah, what a gem she is. And mate, I've been getting beautiful messages, and you have too, from people who've been following us and supporting us. And we're going to keep trucking. We're going to keep going. Look, we're sorry we've been disjointed the last few months because there's been a lot of traveling and a lot of stuff going on. And it looks like I may be going back to the States in August for other issues, but we'll talk about that closer to the time. And we'll also let you know when the videos are available of the events that we were involved, or Michelle and I are involved in, over in America. They're going through editing and all that. And as soon as they're available, we'll post the links. Also want to thank our wonderful Suzanne Burns. What a tireless lady. She's our production admin. It sounds like we've got this massive staff, Johnny, but we don't. And I want to thank Grant and Allison for supporting Suzanne. I won't mention their last name because they won't like it. That they're sort of behind the scenes people, but they're supporting her so she can support us. And we thank you guys. We love you both for that. And Stuart Robertson, our tireless sergeant, our master at arms, Johnny, who posts all this stuff. Tireless worker for Club Grubbery and Church Without Walls. Has fought cancer. He's had a kidney removed. He had stage 3, progressing to stage 4. and he tells me he's completely recovered after having the kidney removed a few weeks ago. Now, Stuart, look after yourself. We need you.
Yes, definitely.
Anyhow, we're prattling on, Johnny, but it's nice to be back in the seat again with you, buddy. And we want to talk about, I think, in a program soon about what you've been going through with Fair Work and all that rubbish.
Yeah, well, that'll take that'll take a program in itself. Fair idea.
Justice is becoming a wispy ghost that drifts off into the horizon, mate.
I think that's yep, that's pretty accurate.
Anyway, you've often been heard to say.
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
You couldn't, mate. And stay out of the trees, everyone. Great to be back. We love you. We're going to keep pushing the banner as far as we can, as high as we can, and stick with us. We'll stick with you. And don't forget what you did yesterday got you to today, and it's still a great country. Why? Because you live in it. God bless you all. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, you'll be looking at Trevor Loudon talking about Comrade PM. And then I think Friday night, you're going to be looking at Craig Kelly with an in-depth into Craig Kelly and what he's doing with the Libertarians. God bless you all. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon on Club Grubbery. Thanks for your support. Bye for now.